So, thank you for your time and for agreeing to speak with us. As you can see, I'm really excited to find out more about you and your work. Also, as you know, I asked people to send me questions for you.
Okay.
So I made a mix of my questions and theirs.
Very good.
Okay, so let's get the party started.
Sure.
The first question is, what did influence you as a child to become an artist?
Um, Gosh, I don't remember a time that I wasn't drawing. I always grew up drawing quite a bit, but certainly I was a big fan of uh, animation, Disney films, the movies of Don Bluth. Um, and I read quite a bit of fantasy and other things growing up, and so um, I'm trying to think. It probably was the animation industry that got me into drawing first, but as I grew up, there were just more and more things that I was exposed to.
You did special courses for drawing?
Not when I was a kid so much. I drew a lot. And when I was young, I thought I had very high opinion of myself as an artist when I was a little kid, and I quite stupidly prided myself for a little while that I had never taken an art class, and then I realized that was really dumb, and uh, and so eventually it wasn't really till high school that I started taking uh, art very seriously. Like I knew that I needed to improve, and so it wasn't until high school that I was doing that. I did take an occasional. I think I took one class that was kind of a community class in my area um, when I was much younger, but it didn't really give me any sort of instruction on drawing. It was more like a drawing club. Kids got together and there was a teacher and he would just kind of say draw stuff and he'd come around and maybe help us a little bit, but no, it was in high school that I really kind of caught the direction that I wanted to go, and then in college, of course, that I learned very quickly that I had a lot to improve, and um, but a lot of I mean, up until high school, it was just me just drawing whatever I wanted to and having fun with it.
Okay, but if you were to talk to a child now, like a small child, what would you advise him to do?
I would probably do a lot of the same. It's funny is uh, I talk to a lot of people, a lot of aspiring artists and illustrators, and there's a part of me that wants to tell someone young, maybe like I'm trying to tell myself at a young age, really push yourself to work hard and do these sort of things. But when you're young, it's hard to have the discipline to approach art in a very academic way. It's really a great time to just have fun, be creative, explore your imagination, and come up with new ideas and stories and things like that. That's what I really enjoyed when I was young, and I think that probably was a big help for me. So that would be I have had friends that would say, "Oh, my son wants to start drawing, and would you be willing to teach them?" And I'll help them, but over time I've learned that really just the best thing that they can do is just have fun with it, and if they have the passion and that stays, then they can do the academic stuff later on, the studies and the drawing from nature and things like that. But yeah, just having fun is a great way to start.
Okay. Um, but from drawing and having fun, how did you end up doing stuff for the board games?
It's been a long path. I've always been I've always loved board games. I wasn't exposed to more modern games, Euro games, until until I was actually in college. But even as a kid, I made games, not very good games, but I would make stuff and play around with that. So I was always a big fan of board games, but for a career, it was not something I even considered very much at all. I went to school to go into the animation industry. I left school, and there wasn't an opportunity at the time in the animation, so I went to video games. I was a concept artist for Ubisoft for 7 years, and that was a fantastic part of my career. But I left that about 5-6 years ago to just be a freelancer doing concept art work mostly for video games still. But then an opportunity came to as I was working on fantasy illustration and things like that for freelance stuff, a board game opportunity came along with Mission Red Planet. And so I did that, I can't remember how many years ago, with Fantasy Flight. And then Citadels came along shortly after that with the Fantasy Flight again. And then I realized it was just kind of a fun industry that I just kind of had not considered in my freelance work, and it become a great thing that's been very steady ever since. So.
Well, we're very happy you got here. So you would say that Mission Red Planet is the game that influenced the most your career in this industry?
I don't know if it's the thing. I wouldn't say it's probably the thing that's influenced it the most. It certainly was obviously my start, and it was a great game to work on. I mean, my first board game to work on. I didn't realize at the time how well known the game was, and so it was just a project to me that was a good fit for my style. And but then after finishing it and seeing its impact in the game community, I was surprised that so many people had bought it, and knew about it, and I didn't really know much about it at the time. So I wouldn't say that. The most influence for sure has been Everdell. It's because I mean I'm still relatively new in this industry. Mission Red Planet was a great intro. Citadels was great, and wonderful opportunities, and I loved working on those. But even when I was working on them, I didn't consider board games even to be a something that I could consistently do for work. So I probably wouldn't have even considered at that time that I was a board game artist. It was just some projects that came along. Everdell definitely took that from, being just something I dabbled in, or I took the opportunity when it came, to now being pretty exclusively a full-time board game artist now. And it, for a variety of reasons, which we may talk about, Everdell was the perfect fit for me and my artistic and creative sensibilities, and so it's definitely been the biggest influence in my career in board games. But it certainly had an impact on me creatively as well. So.
Okay. Since we're talking about Everdell,
Sure.
How does your creative process work? Where do you draw your inspiration from? How much do you spend researching? Do you research?
For Everdell in particular, I don't often get a lot of. Research is extremely important. It's rare for any of my clients to. I don't have the opportunity to spend a lot of time researching in most situations with projects I work on. With Everdell, I think that the biggest thing at that point when we first started with Everdell is I think we both, myself, James Wilson, the game designer, Dan May, the art director, we all had kind of a unified vision for it. We were all fans of the Redwall series of books, which was, I didn't mention it earlier, but it definitely was a significant influence on me when I was younger, and always has been. So when they pitched the game to me, and I saw what the potential of it could be world-wise, it was something that I had. It's almost like I had been thinking about the world of Everdell for decades, perhaps. But what, getting down to the actual practice of actually doing the game itself, there probably wasn't a lot of research as far as what made, I don't know, each character something specific. I was often just for each image looking for inspirational lighting or environments that would be cool with this particular character. Certainly in the sketching part of for every project, and certainly for Everdell, there were preliminary steps to getting to the final images, and so I'd explore ideas in the sketch phase and move forward. But I don't know, it sounds funny. I mean, it sounds silly that I don't have a lot of. There probably wasn't really a lot of research. It was the guys at Starling Games were very kind and trusting to just basically say, Andrew, in so many words, you got a handle on this world, so just make it fun and make it interesting. And so I kind of ran with my gut for a lot of things, and so yeah. It sounds like a dumb answer, but I mean, there was certainly research and reference gathering throughout the entire process, but maybe for time restraints, like many projects, the need to get working on art, to start the process of creating art was there. So I didn't have the luxury of extensive time to research and plan and figure out everything in the world. It kind of developed as I went.
Okay. Do you usually listen to music when working?
I do.
What did you listen to when doing Everdell?
Oh gosh, I listen to everything, but there are certainly certain music that gets me in more epic thought processes. So I love soundtracks. I've always been a big fan of movie soundtracks, so I'll listen to that often when I work. I'm a really big fan of Enya, and so I have like a Pandora station that's an Enya Pandora station, and there's something about her music and other music like it that always feels like there's something magical or story driven in the stuff in the music that's there. So and I think that's the same reason I like soundtracks as well, especially for movies that I really love. There's a lot of storytelling going on or there's an experience when I'm listening to it that reminds me of that. So I can't, there wasn't one album or anything that was always on, but that was on there. I'm a huge fan of Cirque du Soleil, and I have a lot of their soundtracks, so I'll have those on often, and those are neat, again, very storytelling type of music. But at the same time, I'll turn on any random thing to give myself to shake things up a bit every once in a while. But if I'm really in the groove, it's more stuff like soundtracks and Enya and things like that. So.
Okay. And what was the funnest part and the hardest part in doing Everdell?
Funnest part was for sure. I mean, it was a dream project, and it still is. We're still doing more stuff for it. So it's always, I think, the relationship that I have with them is what's. I mean, it's fun making all of the images. I'm trying to come with a better answer, but certainly what made it a very enjoyable experience for me was they gave me that freedom to explore what I wanted to explore. But so I loved the chance to fill out that world in a small way. I really didn't have a lot of world building that I was doing direct, brainstorming and figuring out. I didn't. James Wilson and I, we are now good friends. But at the beginning of the process, we didn't talk. We didn't know each other very well at the time when I first started Everdell, and so we weren't collaborating a huge amount with that. So it was just kind of just playing around with the world and trying to figure it out. So that was the funnest part, if that's not very clear. But the hardest part, gosh.
Or I don't know, do you remember any challenges you faced?
Well, there weren't a lot of challenges artistically or with the project itself, other than at the time I remember being very busy with other things, and so it's hard to not think about. It's hard to think about Everdell and not also remember that it was a fairly stressful time, because it was just. I was still at that time doing a lot of video game work for other people and in the animation industry and things like that. And so right at the time that I was doing Everdell, I was also balancing a lot of other projects, and which I still do. But no, honestly, working with Starling Games has been fantastic the whole time. Working with James has been great. I really have been able to feel like it's my own world. Even though I'm not the creator of Everdell, I feel like I was given the opportunity to have some ownership over at least the way it looks, and so that was just a really rewarding, fun experience.
Okay, but you also started designing, and not as a child, but as a grown-up, designing your own board games. How did that start?
So. Again, I hadn't started doing that seriously until probably about 5 years ago. A group of friends. I'd moved to a new area. I was living in North Carolina in the States, and had moved to Arizona. And when I moved here, I got to know some good friends. I got to meet some new people and developed a friendship with a group of guys that had very similar interests to me. We actually started meeting on a weekly basis to kind of just talk about stuff, because we wanted to make something. And honestly, it wasn't even necessarily board games at that time. Eventually, we realized we all had a genuine interest in that, and so that's where it went. But eventually, most or half of the group moved away or had other responsibilities, and so me and another guy, a good friend, Michael Patience, and we partnered together to work on Planecrafters. That was the first game that I designed, co-designed with him, and so that was a long process. We didn't know really how to do that, how it worked, but we spent probably 3 years in development on Planecrafters, more than 3 years probably, where we just sit in my office once a week and play with ideas and play test, and the typical thing. Research. We would always be on Jamie Stegmeyer's blog, reviewing best practices of things for game design and making games, and But then shortly before Planecrafters went to Kickstarter, I connected with a good friend of mine, David Somerville, who made Vast, and we had been friends for many years. And anyway, he had some need for some art help with a project he was working on called Lightning and Bolt, and we worked together on that and actually launched that before Planecrafters on Kickstarter. And there's possibly some more things going on with that in the future, because the Lightning and Bolt, when we released it, it was a Make 100 project for Kickstarter, so we only made 100 copies of the game. But we are considering a much wider release of that with a much nicer production of it, and with some revamps of some things and art and other things, and so that's possibly in the works. But then since then it's kind of from on my own personal side. I have a few big projects on the horizon, and that are my own design and my own, where I will be doing everything, the design and the art, on my own. Definitely some more things to come. So it's if hopefully people will keep an eyes open, ears out, something for what I'm doing this year.
But why planes for Planecrafters?
Sure. Well, that's primarily my partner's doing. The original concept for the game was his. He asked his daughter. This is while we had been working on a variety of different ideas. We developed something for a little while and realized that it wasn't really fun. So we threw it away, and he asked his daughter, what would, if I could make a game for you, what would you want it to be about? And she said making planes. And that wasn't necessarily because she was a huge plane person, but she knew her dad was. So Mike, my partner, is a very big plane enthusiast, and so we were playing with that. Originally, the Planecrafters was very realistic. The planes were real planes, and we were mixing up, real plane parts, but we realized that was going to be less interesting and we preferred to take it towards a more fantasy aviation world, and we did. But yeah, I mean, I love planes, but that was definitely his direction for that initially.
Okay, and can you tell us a bit more details about lightning and bolt? It's a really interesting concept with the child-parent.
It is. So yeah, I'll tell you a little bit more about the concept. I don't know what I can tell you about other things, but at the moment, but the idea with Lightning and Bolt, again, it was David Somerville who came up with the original concept. He had been playing the game with his daughter for some time. The idea was creating a game experience that would allow children to play with adults with the mechanics scaled appropriately, so kids were not overwhelmed with an adult type of game in its complexity, and adults playing Lightning and Bolt would not be bored because they were playing something that was meant for children. So Lightning and Bolt is a game about a superhero girl with her giant robot sidekick, and they're in this town saving the town from this evil doctor and his minions. And basically, Lightning, when she gets in trouble, Bolt comes and helps her. When Bolt gets damaged, Lightning comes and fixes him. So it's a co-op game, and you can't. One person can't just win the game on their own. It's something that they have to work together to play. But there's a lot more choices for the player who plays Bolt, that character. There's a lot of there's a bit more complexity. It's certainly not a hardcore game. We wanted Lightning and Bolt to be something that built kids up and made them feel like the heroes. So it is mostly about them, but it's something that adults can play and they're not falling asleep while they're playing it. So and I think it does it very, very well. So yeah, it's a fun game. Very excited about its possibilities in the future, and yeah, getting it to more people.
Can you tell us a release date for it? A new release date?
I don't.
Year? Is this year the next?
It's likely this year if we're able to do that. There are challenges certainly for any project that is, in my mind, a personal project like Lightning Bolt. All my client stuff, obviously, I have to balance the client work that I have, and so the personal projects that I plan to release always have to deal with that reality. So while that is a hope that might be happening, that it probably, if we're able to do it, it will probably be this year for sure. But there will be other projects as well, and the frequency of that is probably fairly slow. But we are wanting any of those things to be very high quality.
Okay. And will you make a Kickstarter campaign for it, or? If
yes, if we're able to move forward with that, yes, any project that I'm working on for the time being will be probably Kickstarter related, funded, just because I'm not a full-time publisher, and so I don't have the capital at my disposal to just produce it on the fly. So no, Kickstarter. I've been a big fan of Kickstarter since the very beginning, and I think it's just a genius way for grassroots investment in a project. I'm on there all the time, just looking myself, not only for games but for other things, technology, new gear, just cool things, and I think it's a neat platform to be a part of. So I'm a big fan of it. I plan on being a part of it for some time, until if there comes a day when there's not a need for it, then that's great. But I don't see that that's not something that's not the situation right now, certainly.
Okay. I also was asked to ask you, of course, if you have some advice for people that want to do artwork for the board game industry. I know we talked about a little at the beginning, but something particular for the industry.
Well, besides the general, if you want to be an artist at all or an illustrator at all, you obviously need to put a lot of time and effort into just developing your craft. So I mean that's first and foremost. There's no shortcut, there's no shortcut towards being a professional illustrator. That it takes a lot of work, whatever industry you're in. What's interesting about board games is every game is different. So if you're wanting to be to be an illustrator of board games, you're less likely to be working for one publisher all the time, and so there's so many publishers out there. There's so many different styles that can be done. So it's not like one type of illustrator with a particular style could never get a job in board games. Certainly, if you have a direction to your art that has some larger, broader appeal that makes you more marketable. But I was even just recently thinking about this. Like, I love being in the board game industry, and I have a lot of good friends that are in video games, and sometimes their work can be limited because they don't draw and paint like they're like they should, like someone on Star Wars, or and well, there shouldn't be any lesser quality in board games, and there isn't. There's no like gateway, you have to draw like this or you have to paint like this for board games, because there's probably a game out there being developed that's perfect for any particular person's style. It's just get your name out there, get a portfolio. I got my jobs with Mission Red Planet and Citadels because I had developed a long relationship with Fantasy Flight, doing other smaller things, and years and years of just doing other stuff that maybe wasn't my favorite things. And then they kind of discovered these games that would be a great niche for my style. But after that didn't start my career in board games. I mean, that started it, but that didn't like make it boom like Everdell did. I got Everdell because I went out, and I still do. I go to the conventions and I have business cards and I hand them out to people, and I went to PAX Unplugged in December this last year, and I still just walk to every single booth and give them my card and go, hey, I do this, and here's some work, here's stuff I've done, and that's how I got Everdell. That's how almost every job that I've had has been it's just work, it's just hard work. But it's a wonderful industry to be a part of, and actually it's funny saying that any style can work is completely true. It does make it a little bit harder because the quality, it's going to be very hard for someone who is an expert in this particular style if it's a very niche type of style, it's going to be hard for them to find that job that's the perfect fit. I think the pressure then is maybe to spend a great deal of time making sure that your craft is really good, that you just can draw well, you can do those things, because you're maybe not going to be able to find the perfect job that first time. You're going to have to take the jobs that are fun, but you might have to be stretched a little bit.
Since you said something about conventions, what conventions are you planning to go to this year?
I always try to go to Gen Con. I believe I will be going to Essen this year for the first time. I don't know for sure. It's not solidified. I have been planning to go on my own just for my own experience, but there are a few projects that are happening right now, and that my clients have expressed an interest in having me come out to sign or just talk about the games and be kind of be a representative at their booths. So Essen is very likely going to be happening this year. If that doesn't happen, I'll be going to PAX Unplugged again, which I really, really enjoyed this last year. That was my first time there. But they're so close together that I don't know if I'd make both of them at the same time. I do have a convention here in Arizona. It's a smaller convention, but I'll be doing some panels and some discussions at the Arizona Game Fair in March. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't at the moment have any plans to have a booth of any kind, though, at any of those things. I will probably just be wandering around and playing games and talking to people mostly. So, but if anybody is going and wants to connect, I'd always love to meet up with new people. So,
well, that's great. That's great news. So, what are you working on now? Can you tell us something about the new projects, personal or not?
Some I can. I'm excited. Just yesterday they announced the new love letter is coming out, which I illustrated through Z-Man Games. They acquired the rights to Love Letter, and that was a fun project that I was working on last year, and is now finally announced. Other things. Unfortunately, I have several very large projects that are in the works right now for clients that I am not at liberty to talk about, but they should be announced this year, and people will know about them. Let's see, personal projects. I wish I could say, like, this is for sure happening at this particular time. I think I just like to tease everybody maybe a little bit. But there are definitely things in the works. I have plans for probably 2 Kickstarters this year that are almost certainly 2 Kickstarters this year of personal projects that will be illustrated exclusively by myself, and in some cases designed by me. Or at least partially, but those are personal projects that those will happen. It's possible there could be another third that will happen this year, but probably not. I learned last year how hard Kickstarter can be preparing for that, and it burnt me out pretty bad after Planecrafters, which was a wonderful experience. We're really excited that it funded, but it really killed me. So I think I was scared to get on social media for like 2 or 3 months afterwards, because like I just wanted to curl in a ball in my studio and cry for a little while. No, just be alone and not. Anyway, it's but no, there are definitely some fun things. There's some significant big. Not strictly project, but bigger other career things that are coming, I think, this year, that I think people will have a significant interest in if they're a fan of my work. But okay. I can't say when or how that will happen at the moment, but probably this year.
Okay. So we'll just have to wait and see. Just follow you and...
That's the ticket right there. Sure. Yes. Sadly, I can't give any more information than that, but yeah.
These were our questions, but in the end, I thought maybe it would be fun to play a little trivia game, let's say so, about you. So
okay.
I will tell you some things and you should make a quick response. I don't know. You'll see.
I'll try.
So, favorite video game?
Favorite video game? I play a lot of Battlefield. I've been a big fan of the Battlefield series for a very long time. I don't play a lot of video games, but probably my favorite video game is Journey by that game company.
Yeah.
Love that game.
Favorite board game?
Favorite board game right now is a very less known game called Attica. My wife and I are in the middle of a 150 game tournament to finally decide once and for all who is the best at Attica, because we argue on this point, and so it was only going to be a 50 game tournament, but she won that, so I decided we needed to have a best 2 out of 3 of 50 games each. So we're working on 150 games right now, and I expect to win. So that's my favorite. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Thank you. I'm going to get everybody to cheer for me, and my wife will just give up.
Favorite board game art?
Favorite board game art? I absolutely love Tidal Blades. I haven't played it yet, but that Kickstarter was just amazing. Mr. Cuddington, the artist behind them, did such an amazing job with that. But gosh, What else? There's so many great. So that's the first one that comes to my mind, but it's a more recent thing. I'll say that one.
Okay. Most played board game in your family?
Definitely.
Like all the family?
Definitely Attica at the moment, but I already gave that answer. So what's the other one that we're playing a lot right now? Oh gosh, what is it? Well, a shout out to a great friend and a great game is one that not many people know about at all, but hopefully they will know more about it in the future. Is a game called Iconica. Made by Eric Torres. He's a local here of Arizona, and it's a wonderful, awesome game that he created the artwork for and the game, and that's a fantastic game and world. He's done a fantastic thing with it. That's something we've been playing quite a bit of in our house right now.
Okay. Favorite animation, movie or series, whatever you want.
Favorite animation of all times. Favorite movie recently that's animated, as in like in the last 15 years, is The Incredibles. Absolutely love The Incredibles. Not Incredibles 2. I loved Incredibles. I didn't necessarily love Incredibles 2 that much. Incredibles was perfect all on its own. But I love the new Hilda series on Netflix. It's just this charming, awesome little story. I've only watched I don't know, 8 episodes of it, but my kids have all seen all of it, and we're all pretty big fans. It's just beautiful style and beautiful story.
Favorite graphic novel?
I'm a really big fan of a comic graphic novel called Delilah Dirk. I like that's something I really like a lot. That's one of my favorites.
Okay, I had here your favorite music. Like sort of.
Let's see. Is it my favorite music? Sorry, the stuff. It's not my favorite music necessarily. The stuff that I had there, but what is my favorite music? I don't know. It probably is some of that other stuff. So I already gave it. It sounds sad, but yeah, I'm a funny guy who just loves Enya all the time.
Coffee or tea?
Neither. I don't drink coffee or tea. Hot chocolate. Hardcore
Okay.
hot chocolate person.
Early bird or night owl?
Both. I got up at 3 this morning for work and went to bed at 11. The night before that, I fell asleep on the couch because the night before that, I went to bed at 3 and got up at 5. So I have to. It's horrible, and I'm going to pay the price someday. But I am, in fact, a night owl and an early bird at the same time.
Which cliche about artists do you think to be true?
I'm always wearing turtlenecks and leather pants. So yeah, that one. No. Cliche, I don't know, but we definitely are a different beast. My wife and I are super close, of course. She's my best friend and most wonderful person in the world. But she's not an artist. She's a math teacher, and we think very differently from one another. And I'll think of things that are just weird, and I'll be lost in my head forever. So I don't know. Are we dreamers? Probably, yeah. That would fit me.
What does art mean to you?
My goodness, these are hard. Art. I guess it's expression. It's sharing something. that requires some craft, that requires some expertise. It's not just something that, for something to be art, it can't be done frivolously, I don't think. But it doesn't mean that it has to look a certain way or be a certain thing. It needs to be passionate. It needs to be, but it needs to communicate a message of some sort. I'm not a very I'm going to say artsy fartsy artist. I'm a very practical artist, but I love art of all different kinds. So, yeah, passionate, expressive, purposeful.
Okay. The most recent photo you took is of?
Do you really want to know? My son with horrible hives all over his body, so we could send it to the doctor and go, "What's wrong with our child?" But if you mean like something that's artistic, of where I'm hiking, and I have some beautiful areas here in Arizona that I hike frequently, and I often will take a sunrise picture as I'm hiking at 7 in the morning or something like that. So that's probably the most recent attractive thing I've photographed recently.
Something most people don't know about you?
Most people don't know about me. Well, most people don't know me that much, but I once stood right next to the Queen of the Queen of England's mother. I lived in England for a time, and I once at the National Gallery in London stood right next to the Queen Mum, but she's passed away recently, and so we're not as close as we used to be.
Okay.
But that's true. I did stand. We were both admiring the same piece of artwork, about a foot away from each other.
Well, yeah. I also see in the background there you play some instrument. You play the ukulele? Where?
I have in the past, yes, but now it mostly hangs on my wall until one of my children pulled it off of its string off the wall and it fell on the ground and broke. So so now my music career is over.
Oh.
But no, I do love the ukulele. I used to. I was many years ago. I had a very good friend, an older gentleman from Hawaii that was teaching me quite regularly, and I thought I was doing really well. But then I moved away, and my free lessons were gone, and I didn't practice like I should, and so I stopped. So normally it's just hanging there to make me feel good, like I am musical, but I'm not.
Where can people find out more about you, your projects, your art? Where can they go?
Sure. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. I try to post stuff there often, but I am horribly inconsistent. I will go weeks where I'll tell people about things that are going on, and then other times I don't. But my website, bosleyart.com, is probably the best place. Whenever there are big things happening, I have a newsletter and I send things out. I try to do that monthly. And so there's usually some decent amount of information that I'm passing along through that for sure.
Okay. So that was the last question from our trivia game. Thanks a lot. It's been really great to get to talk to you and find out all kinds of stuff. Like you saw the Queen of England.
Her mother.
Yeah.
Her mother. I never got to meet the Queen, but her mother and I were very
But you were pretty close.
we are best friends until she passed away, and that was
So thank you again for taking the time to speak with me, and we look forward to your upcoming projects.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.